On this podcast, we cover sensitive subjects such as abuse, suicide, self-harm, depression, and other difficult topics. We are not medical professionals. We suffer from our own mental health issues. Our opinions should not be taken as medical advice. Dred the Stigma is for educational purposes and awareness for mental health only.
All right, and another installment in the Dred the Stigma one-on-one. Did I say Dreg?
Dred.
The Stigma.
I don't know.
Dred the
It's
Stigma.
Sunday.
I did. I wanted to do a series. A little 20, 30-minute look into everyday people struggling with mental health issues, their story of their journey, and bring about some hope that, hey, we can all get through this. Sometimes you got to lean on each other. And this being the first installment with a guest, I have the lovely Haley Alexandria Landon. How are you, dear?
I am great, and I'm so glad to be here. This is our second podcast together, so it's exciting.
It is. Yeah. We did one over there at the Indie Horror Junkie podcast. You are I guess your title is spokeswoman over there.
Yes. Mistress Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So as I've mentioned, doing this little series, hopefully having open discussion about mental illness, about our story. You kind of got a foundation of what this is, what my vision is for this. By the other one the first one that I did, where I went through my story. And Haley, you were we have chatted here and there, and you have mentioned your struggles with depression, and certain traumas. Were you also diagnosed with PTSD by chance?
So I tried counseling. I tried it once. The woman ended up taking advantage of me. So that only lasted about a month. She did, I don't remember exactly what it was. Something like adult child of alcoholic parent or something like that. Anxiety and depression. But we really didn't get any further than that. So it's kind of figuring it out as we go.
So, you, I guess now are not dealing with any therapy at the moment?
Nope.
I've
basically been handling everything on my own my whole life, just kind of working through it. I didn't really open up about my story until I would say maybe within the last year and a half is when I started opening up about it. Now I'm pushing myself to lean on people. I've realized the importance of that. Once I started doing that, I realized like my circle is actually way bigger than I realized. So my therapy is basically tattoos, music, and friends and family. And it helps.
Yeah. It really does. I just got some tattoo therapy.
Yes, I saw.
Yeah, a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, repping for us.
Horror Junkie. Yeah, I'm branded. And music has always been such a huge part. Growing up, suffering from depression and whatnot. A lot of suicidal ideology, and music really, helped me get through that. Were you suffering from depression at a young age? When did you notice that something was a little off with Haley?
It honestly probably wasn't until I had my son.
Mm,
I knew things growing up weren't necessarily normal, but I didn't know the extent until I had my son, and I realized, like, well, my son doesn't deal with bottles everywhere and drugs and not being fed and being screamed and yelled at. So once I had him, a lot of things started clicking that maybe I feel the way I do because of the trauma I went through as a kid.
yeah.
So it's been a rough few years working through a lot of that stuff, but
That
we're
that
getting there.
is that is tough, but as you mentioned, leaning on family and friends and having a tight support
Mhm.
system is means more
Mhm.
in healing process, I think, than said friends and family really understand and really get. Speaking on friends and family, I guess your husband is kind of your therapist, I guess, in a sense. I'm sure you
Yeah.
lean on him, and that's tough
Mhm.
because even with my wife, I don't want to lean on her so much that
Yeah.
it does in fact burden her or
And
or
that's how
any
I feel too.
I'm sorry.
That's how I feel too, is it
Yeah.
feels like a burden, but I feel like we kind of talked before, people lean on you, then you feel comfortable enough to lean on them. Because then there's kind of a mutual, like, I don't know, then you don't feel like a burden.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was always my thinking, I feel like a burden. And of course, that was usually in the midst of a, downward spiral that I
Mhm.
would think that I didn't want to burden anybody because it was such a burden on myself.
Mhm.
Um and again, as we mentioned, you can open up as much or as little as you like. What would you say the extent of your depression or just your down moments? What would you say the extent of that is when it's really hitting you?
So I've finally gotten to a point where I can identify when it's coming on. I
Mm,
know, like, okay, I feel different today. So I know at least for the next week, I'm going to have to be patient with myself and I'll vocalize it. And like we talked about, communication is a huge part of it.
absolutely.
So I'll communicate to people like, I'm going to be distant. I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to keep to myself. And it's because of this. There were times growing up, and I don't know how much I have to censor myself. I know Facebook's weird. So
Yeah, no,
I don't
no,
know. If
you're
we get
you're
flagged, we
good.
get
Yeah.
flagged. So I remember as a kid, it would get bad. There was several times I tried killing myself just because I home life was so bad. Um, and I thought it was me. Like I thought something was wrong with me to make everything just this horrible. So I thought that was kind of normal. I know that sounds weird, but I mean, I had friends going through stuff too, so I thought it was normal. Like they're going through it, so I guess this is how I'm supposed to feel the rest of my life. And like I said, up until the past few years, once I started like actually talking about things and working through them, I can now identify it. And that's when I know like to be extra patient, communicate with people so they know like I'm not just trying to attack them or be weird out of nowhere. Um, and that's seemed to help with my depression. I'm able to write it out a lot easier, I guess, than before.
Yeah, recognizing it, which I have a borderline personality disorder, and I get a lot of internal monologue going on,
Mhm.
and part of one of the biggest therapies is DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which I'm actually starting my first session this coming Wednesday. Um, And that teaches you kind of mindfulness and recognizing, okay, why am I having these thoughts? Recognizing it, just like any illness, whether it's cancer, whether it's what you recognizing it in the very beginning is going to help, regardless. Oh, I had a point that I wanted to bring up, and it had to do with something you said, but about what
It'll cycle around.
yeah, I think that the trauma that you went through, and I'm guessing that this was from a young age. Yeah. And being that it's consistent, one thing that I've learned was there's something called complex PTSD, which is an ongoing, could be day in, day out, monthly, an ongoing traumatic events. And unfortunately, it sounded like you went through a lot of that. Are you like me, Haley, where you take and you do a lot of research on the trauma? I've done a lot of research here lately on trauma, not only how it affects your mind and your behavior and your
Which
view
is
on life.
insane. Yes.
But yes, absolutely. But physically, it can progress into, certain types of physical ailments. You find yourself researching any of that to become more aware.
Yes. And that's actually, that has helped me realize like why I do certain things.
Yeah.
I can't really think of an example, but certain things will trigger me and I realize, okay, maybe I do this because of this. And just the research alone, it's helped me kind of, like you were talking about, modify my behavior, that it's maybe next time, let's approach it differently. And I think the more you know too about yourself and about what you're going through, it helps a lot.
Now, I tell you what, you are you were very strong. Just getting a glimpse into the trauma that you went through, and then dealing with all of this. It's very courageous, for one. I tried it for years, but given I have major depressive disorder, CPTSD, BPD. Trying to deal with that along with an active addiction being alcohol, that was gasoline on the fire, really. And it wasn't until I got sober, it got harder, because now I have to look at things a little clearer. And it hurts a lot more, and I'm dealing with those emotions a lot, feeling them a lot more. I'm guessing, did the way you grew up, did that kind of steer you away from certain activities, maybe drinking? I don't know what your
I do
don't
not
drink at all.
No, I got to the point where I wouldn't even take Tylenol if I had a headache. Like it got that bad. I suspected my mom did drugs. I didn't necessarily see it, but I mean, there'd be times as early as 4, so my son's age, I would get up and it's like 11 o'clock and they had a party. Everybody's passed out, blacked out. I can't wake her up. I have to climb up on the counter to feed myself. So I witnessed so much that I was just terrified to do anything that would change me. Because I watched
you down the path to being like
and I watched her change. Yeah. She would go from being happy and sweet, and then in like a flip of a switch, she was totally different person. So I don't touch alcohol. I was a bartender for a long time, but I never drank. It definitely changed how I view a lot of things, and I don't judge other people if they drink like at all. And that's one thing, like I've said to you, is just watching you come out of drinking, and even you reaching out like you did, like a week ago. It takes a lot to be able to do that. And I was so proud of you for
as it takes a lot for you to sit here and be open
Mhm.
with your story and traumatic events that you went through, it takes a lot of courage. And hopefully, through these series of our sit down, that and future sit downs, that people will become more comfortable and opening about it. Did you are you aware of or whatnot? Did either one of your parents, did they suffer from any kind of mental illness that you know of?
So I'm finding things out now about my mom. She passed back in February, so just a few months ago,
I'm sorry.
which just unleashed this flood of emotions that I've been like,
Yeah.
I thought I was okay. I thought I was working through things, and that just. So I'm finding out a lot of things. I think she was a heavy, heavy, heavy alcoholic. On top of that, when she passed, we found meth in her system. So I found out for at least the last 15 years she was doing meth, which
Mm.
on top of everything else she was doing, I don't know how she made it this far. I believe those two mixed with her depression, and I think she had bipolar, probably several other things. All of that together, it almost created a monster.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and I know to a lot of people that sounds harsh saying, but you don't really expect to, I guess, be as blunt once you start working through these things. And I realize now that she was just very, I don't know, very broken, I think. And
Yeah,
no
that's
matter how
probably a
many
good
times,
way to put it.
yeah. And a lot of people tried to help her, but I think she was just so gone that I think some people just can't necessarily be saved.
Yeah. Did she have a rough upbringing? Because I think a lot of times if you go back and you see, well, okay, I'm not the only one. To my knowledge, I am the only one that has suffered, a lot of mental illness, literally the black sheep. And my family, mom, grandparents, they all had to see, a lot. And I was just curious if I guess your mom in particular, if she had a rough upbringing, because a lot of what you're saying, it usually stems from some sort of childhood trauma and covering up these feelings that you were having. And you notice, I know with myself, I noticed I felt, good up to a point when I was
Yeah.
drinking. And then, like you said, it was a flip of a light switch. And I could be, just the great parent one day. And it got to a point where it was 1 minute, I'm awesome. The next minute, even without alcohol, I'm,
Mhm.
you know. Um, so yeah, I did your mom have a rough upbringing that you know of?
To my knowledge, which to her, I mean, she was like, she lied about everything. It
Uh,
could be the smallest thing she lied about. So to her, yes, she did. According to family and friends, which her friends actually, once she passed, reach out and they've been amazing. Um, Apparently things were actually fine for her, and it seemed to be maybe after she had me is when she changed. And what I think, and I could be wrong, is I think she went through postpartum depression, didn't get help for it, and probably went to drugs and alcohol.
hmm.
She was with a lot of horrible, horrible men, which introduced her to meth and tons of other stuff. So I think that's probably where it stemmed from.
And how ironic, you said that right after you were born was,
Hmm.
when a lot of the depression started. And you had mentioned, kind of the same thing, a lot of these things surfacing,
Hmm.
when your son was born. I've noticed that with me at least, and it almost sounds like the same thing with you. My with me drinking when, my kids were growing up, I would have my episodes, and I regret, but I was very much not dealing with the issues at hand. Now, my oldest daughter, who, has my grandson, she doesn't drink. My son doesn't drink. Um, my youngest daughter, she may every once in a while have a glass of wine, but she's working, she's in school, so
Mhm.
she really don't have the time. And it kind of what would be seen as a bad influence, and it was. My kids could have turned out either way, just like you could have turned out either way,
Mhm.
and turned to drugs and alcohol to deal with what you were dealing with. It kind of my bad influence actually had a good
It's a
influence on me.
lesson.
Yeah, a
Yes.
lesson.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I wasn't good with money. My oldest daughter is frugal as hell.
Well,
Um, all of
that's
her
a hard one
bills
to
are.
learn because I still haven't learned that one. I'm like, blow it
Oh
all.
no, I haven't learned. I'm getting better, but I haven't learned. Now, people may be wondering, watching this and listening to your story, Otis, why are you going, so far, back, asking questions about grandparents and moms and this? Because I think that it is very inspiring that you broke the cycle.
Yes.
There was a bad cycle going on, possibly with your grandmother and your mom, and then your mom and you said, no, I've had enough. This is not how it's going to go for me and my son. I'm not picking up the bottle. I'm not putting myself in those situations. And I think that's very inspiring that you can be the one to break the cycle and in turn help yourself. And I think it's like I said, that's pretty awesome that you deal with this. And you obviously must have a good support system
I
to be
will
able.
add, though, it is not easy at all. I mean,
No.
it was the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with. I cut my mom off. I don't know. I mean, she passed, what did I say, February? I cut her off well over a year ago. And it was hard. I mean, my son, he was young, so it didn't have as big of effect on him. But I could tell she wasn't okay. And she at times was very violent, my whole life, very violent. And I just saw her spiraling even further down. And I just couldn't have that around my son. And the reason the depression hit so bad after I had him, I was in labor, and come to find out, she was in my house drinking, doing drugs while I was in labor. And that's when I knew, like, this has got to stop. Like, my son will not, I'm not going to have people in and out of his life. And especially someone like that. I've had some people question, like, how could you do that to your mom? I could easily do that with anybody because it is not
Anybody,
worth,
yeah.
yep. It's not worth it. I don't care who it is. It's not worth having that around. And I mean,
Yeah,
okay.
that's like saying, okay, well, I don't know how you could not have your son around a drug addict and an alcoholic. What are you talking about? Because I think
There's
they're
no
so
logic
hung
for
up
these
on
people.
it's his grandmother. So what?
Hmm.
You
I
know?
mean, his grandmother was also getting arrested on her way over. It was not a safe.
No.
And opening up about it, I didn't want people to be angry with her. I didn't want it to seem like, okay, well, now she's passed. Now you're just talking shit about her. And it was never that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure to some it probably seems that way, but I spent so long hiding it. I mean, people growing up, they had no clue because I just lied to myself. I lied to everybody else because I was terrified of her. I mean, if anybody told her, oh, hey, they said this about you, I would have had my ass beat. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was just scared. But now, I mean, once I started speaking out, she was not happy. It got bad again, but it wasn't around my son. And that was one thing, is I did not talk about it in front of him. He
Yeah.
has no bad memories of her. He has no bad, there's nothing, he doesn't know any of the bad stuff. So, I mean, that stays away from him, at least until he's older. And if he wants to ask, then I'll be
Yeah,
open.
absolutely. I mean, he deserves to, have a
Mhm.
happy upbringing. Two-parent households are kind of, few and far between. Not a whole lot of that happening. So every child deserves that. I could go on and on about all the studies showing that a father in the household can do tremendous, strides towards
Mhm.
the child's mental health and his future. So it's very important, and he deserves to have a happy childhood. I see pictures all the time. Looks like he's having a
Crazy
blast,
and
ice
busy.
cream socials and all kind of
Yes.
things.
Oh, yeah. Keep him busy. Yeah, he's been going crazy with this move. He's like, I want to go out. I'm like, no, we got to move more boxes. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that's really awesome. A message of hope. And I didn't know the whole thing about you not being in therapy and the background with your mom and your story. I'm learning like everybody else is. I knew bits
Mhm.
and pieces, but I think is the message of hope, as we wind down, in my opinion, would be you broke the cycle.
Yes.
And of course, it is not easy to deal
No.
with it on your own. It takes a very strong individual, I think, to do
And a
that. And of
lot of
course,
time.
and a lot of time, absolutely, probably for the rest of your life
Mhm.
battling it. This is something a lot of people don't understand. That doesn't work for everybody. Like I mentioned, I'm starting DBT. I am on medication, SSRIs, mood stabilizers, things like that. That works for me. It don't work for everybody.
Yeah.
I think what people need to do is they need to, take, and it takes like about 6 tries before you normally find, on average, the right therapist. Real quick, do you think that that's why that kind of turns you away from therapy and had you doing it on your own? Or was that just who you were as a person? Having a bad experience with therapy can turn a lot of people away and have them never go back.
Yes. And this is kind of a long answer, so bear with me.
No worries.
I have struggled building relationships with women. For a long time, I was like, why can't I just make friends with females? And I've always struggled with it. And I realized one day, okay, it's my mom. I couldn't have a relationship with my mom, so like I can't click with women. So I made a goal for myself to find a female therapist, find a female counselor, go sit down with a female, trust her. That went very south. But I'm sure there are some good female counselors and therapists out there. This one just happened to be a dud.
Right.
I am very super, super independent. So it took a lot of me to even go into counseling, trust someone, and to seek help.
Mm-hmm.
She took advantage of that, and I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm doing the rest myself. And so I did. That does not, again, work for everybody. Some people do need to go sit down with other people. Some people even just need to sit with friends. For me, I probably won't try it again because it took a lot just to trust that. And once my trust
It
is
was
broken,
broken.
that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So I probably won't do that again. But I think what I've been doing has worked. My mom divided me against pretty much everybody for a long time, and I've actually built relationships with everybody now. So now that I have that circle back, it just that alone has helped a lot.
Yes. Leaning on friends, don't, if
Mhm.
they are your true friends, they ain't gonna mind.
Yeah.
And Yeah, as we always say, reach out, do
Mhm.
do a little check in. Hey, how you been? you know, everything good. You may catch somebody in a bad time and really kind of needed that reassurance that, you know, people are thinking about you, people care. That can do wonders. A lot of, with me and borderline, a lot of reassurance is needed. Otherwise, my internal monologue starts dictating, you know, how I think. DBT rewires the brain, and what a weird, you know, concept. At 52,
Oh, yeah.
I need meds. I got to rewire my brain
It's a lot.
to think properly. It's surreal at times. I mean, I'm surprised I made it this long, but I'm
Well,
here.
we're happy that you did.
And thank you. You know, you're here. You are breaking, you know, the cycle of trauma, of abuse in your particular situation. And again, that takes a lot of courage. As coming on and sitting here and chatting with me about your story and bringing a message of hope, I want to thank you so much, Haley, for
Thank you for
joining.
even asking. You know, I enjoy talking with you.
Well, thank you. And this will be over there at the Dred the Stigma YouTube channel as soon as we're done right here. Check it out. Give us a comment. Ask questions on the one I did, on the one we did here. And hopefully this helps.
Then reach out.
Yeah,
Reach out.
absolutely. Yeah. Reach out to your friends. Check in on them because you never know. You know, you could decide I'm not going to check in. This person's fine, and they're not fine. So again, thank you, Haley. It takes a lot of courage to come and talk openly about this, and I appreciate you very much, dear.
Well, you too. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely.